Let me start here, though. In my business, we're laser focused on learning every detail and filling in every blank about a gripping true crime case. But sometimes in this process, our hearts just get broken all over again each time we learn something new. And so it is with the University of Idaho murders. Since the case moved to Boise with a different judge, we've seen a blizzard of unsealed, unredacted court filings and a regular supply of details and disclosures, even some bombshells. And tonight, two absolutely stunning revelations about the surviving housemates texting and talking in the wee hours of November 13th, 2022. Also, a rare peek into some grand jury testimony, something we don't often get to see. We knew that Dylan Mortensen, a surviving roommate, had texted an Uber driver just after 2 o'clock in the morning. That's about 2 hours before the murders happened. But now we know that she and three of her roommates, Bethany, Kaylee, and Maddie, all of whom had just arrived home from a night out, had actually contemplated going out again. The court document reads, and I quote, "At approximately 2 a.m., they met up in Kaylee's bedroom and talked for a while before going to bed. The fifth roommate, Xana Kernodle, who was out with her boyfriend, Ethan Chapin, was not home yet. The roommates debated going out to the food truck for late-night snack, prompting Dylan to send a text at 2:10 a.m. to an Uber driver she knew to see if he was driving. Ultimately, however, the girls decided to just go to bed." Man, that brings to mind a lot of what ifs, doesn't it? What if they'd gone back out? What if they just decided, let's go, let's do it. It's 2 a.m., let's go get more food. Might that have changed the course of history on that horrifying night? Of course, there is a good chance that they'd popped back out to that food trunk, that they still would have been home before the knife-wielding intruder, allegedly Bryan Kohberger, broke in and killed Kaylee, Maddie, Xana, and Ethan. But we will never know. And that brings me to the second revelation. We knew about Dylan and Bethany's frantic text messaging between 4:22 a.m. and 4:26 a.m. when Dylan tells Bethany that nobody will answer their phones and that she's afraid because she saw someone in a ski mask. And we knew that Dylan then ran down to Bethany's room on the ground floor of the 3-level house. But the court documents now reveal a brand new fact that we never knew. And it is, honestly, it is something horrifying. Again, quoting Dylan. Dylan again tried calling Kaylee and Xana, but neither responded. Dylan then exited her room and began running towards Bethany's bedroom. On her way, she noticed Xana lying on the floor of her bedroom with her head towards the wall and her feet towards the door. Dylan thought Xana was drunk. Once Dylan arrived downstairs at Bethany's room, they locked the door and both made additional unanswered calls to the other roommates. Hours passed, and at 11:50 a.m. the next morning, 6 minutes before the 911 call that you have heard on this program, Dylan called her friends Emily Allant and Hunter Johnson because she was too afraid to go upstairs by herself. And the court filing reads, Emily and Hunter met Dylan and Bethany at the bottom floor of the house. Together, Dylan, Bethany, and Hunter started to walk up the stairs to the second floor. When they reached the second floor, Hunter went to the kitchen to grab a kitchen knife. Now, this next part is from Dylan's grand jury testimony. When Hunter came back out, Dylan said, quote, "She saw Xana again for a split second," and this is Dylan talking, "and just started bawling because she thought she had just like, I don't even know. I thought maybe she was still just drunk and all asleep on the floor. Bethany also saw Xana lying on the floor." Hunter told Dylan and Bethany to, quote, "get out." Emily, who had started up the stairs, also turned around after Hunter instructed her not to come any further. They both went outside shortly afterwards, and Hunter exited the house and then told them to call 911. He was pale, white, and mentioned something about someone being unconscious. You can hear a lot of that, you know, you can hear a lot of it on the 911 call. We just envisioned that the banging and the calling out, Xana, Ethan, was at the bedroom door, but it may not have been. It may have been down the hall and around the corner at the stairs. This is where I'm going to stop and bring in Steve Gonzalez. Steve is Kaylee Goncalves' father. He's been a regular guest on the program. Steve, these were details that I found astounding. They seemed to put into place more details of a very confusing picture of what happened that night. And I often stop and I think about you and the other parents, and whether you get a heads up that this stuff is coming, whether you have someone who sits down with you and goes through it and helps you to sort through it. How do you receive this kind of information?
We normally get an email beforehand. We work back and forth. I don't think either party really had an understanding of how to really construct something where you can share information, but not too much information. But the communication's gotten a lot better. I've really grew to like these guys. I mean, I really care about those people and all the work that they've done. So I think they've always tried to work towards communication, but I'm sure they're very busy, and it's not easy to always remember to keep us in the loop.
You know, it was a surprise to me, Steve, to hear this detail that Bethany got a glimpse down the hall of what now appears to be Xana's open bedroom door, and Xana lying inside that bedroom door, and ran downstairs to Bethany's room. And then at one point, Bethany also saw that same image. But it's sort of just, it's flummoxing to think that they called friends, they called 911 before anybody sort of went to investigate what was happening in that bedroom with the door now open. We always assumed that it was closed and they couldn't get past it.
Yeah, that's definitely a puzzling part of it. But I always assume, you have somebody who's scared, girl, slightly, intoxicated. My own daughter, when my son was playing a prank on her, acting like he was being attacked, him and his mom, Kaylee ran upstairs and hid under the bed and called me at work. So when people are scared, they're young. They don't think the same way as a grown adult does. And I think they were just thinking that something bad had happened, but they didn't want to believe it. They weren't really prepared to mentally accept what was happening. And I totally understand that, because it's not something that we're used to in Idaho. It's not something that is common. It's not even, it's just unheard of. So I chalk it up to that. And I know that there's a lot of forensic, and there's a lot, these girls had their phones on. I already said way back in the day that you could tell when they went up the stairs and downstairs. This is all laid out. Every step has been retraced. So it didn't make a difference in the bigger picture. And I've always said that there could be blessings for late calls as well too.
Yeah. It's also just so jarring to get the detail that the girls were all together up in your daughter's room, chatting about, let's all go out again, 2 o'clock in the morning, let's go back to the food truck. And I'm not sure if you heard how I laid it out at the top of the show, but all I can think of is the what ifs, if they had actually decided to go. And I'm wondering how you're processing that information.
I knew a little bit of the details about that. I don't even talk about some of it just because I don't want to hurt some of the people, that are involved in this. If, certain people would have picked up phones, all those type of things, those are what ifs. But I think what it really goes to your audience is these girls were best friends. And even the last moments of my daughter and Maddie's, they were surrounded with friends, and they were in their beds. So just keep that in mind, because there's going to be probably some people are going to try to drag these surviving people through the mud. And up to their very last moments, they were hanging out with these, the people who passed away, planning on doing something fun. And my daughter came down there to hang out with one of those girls, and that's the reality of it. That's the truth of it, not some of the speculation that you're going to eventually hear about.
Yeah, and shame on those who have cast aspersions on these two surviving roommates who have been to hell and back. They're still there. They're not back. And how anyone could set upon them with ridiculous conspiracy theories is beyond the pale. There was something that you mentioned, I think a couple of days ago in an interview that sort of stood out to me. And that was that I think you had a chance to speak with the coroner and got a detail about one of the injuries that your daughter suffered at the hands of this killer. I think it was a punch to the face. Can you tell me what it is that you learned?
I don't go into all the details on it because I want the court to bring it out. I want them to do it. But yes, I feel 2.5 years. The defense has a strategy to have everybody forget. And I'm here to make sure they don't forget. So when I do have to let stuff out, it's because I don't want people to forget that we have a monster. And yes, one of the girls was a little more intoxicated. He was able to go after that, Maddie Mae first. And my daughter woke up and he struck her multiple times and broke her nose. And yeah, and there's a little bit more details to that, but I leave that to them in case that's something pertinent for them to know and to let them release it. But I'm not going to let anyone forget about what this monster did. And I'll leave it at that.
But they were able to give you that detail that that the killer killed Maddie first and then went after Kaylee second?
Correct.
I think there's a lot of forensics that we're going to learn in this trial. I hope you're going to be okay, you and Christy and the family, when it comes time for those testimony days. The last thing I wanted to ask you about, Steve, is that you've learned that Bryan Kohberger called out from work the day after these murders. What do you know about that, and how did you hear this?
There's a thing called a Bryan tally I've heard about. I've spoken because I was vocal, because I came out. Some people reached out to me. This individual was an employee of WSU. And from there, I learned of some details. So, yeah, there was an investigation, an HR type investigation. And I don't know all the details about it, but I do know these girls felt very creeped out. They talked to people in power and they said, document it. And they started documenting it. And that's how we know that one of the days, the day after he took that photo where he's acting like he's, super confident, got away with murder. He doesn't look sick to me at all. You guys can look at, your audience can go look at it themselves. And I heard that's the only time you ever called in sick as well.
That's unbelievable detail. Steve, I always am very appreciative that you take the time to speak with us. I'm glad you keep your daughter's memory alive and the story alive as well. It's important that nobody forget what happened. Thank you again for this.
Yeah.
Steve Gonzalez joining us from Idaho tonight.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.